How's it going, everyone? Justin here with MyManJustin's Collectible Emporium, and I'm your man for Pokemon cards, card analysis, and Pokemon investment consulting. Today, I wanted to do a video that used a little bit of my media analysis training that I got with my degree at UC Berkeley. And I was thinking about Pokemon cards and the idea of ideology versus art. And I was thinking about this in terms of Pokemon cards. So if we think about ideology versus art, we can think of ideology as a set of axioms put forth in such a way that is made to be interpreted in a specific way. It's like a prepackaged form of thought in which you don't have to dissect it in your own individual interpretation based on your experiences, based on your understanding, while an art is presented to invoke thought and can probably be interpreted in possibly an infinite amount of ways. And I think Pokemon rises itself to the level of an art, not an ideology. And I'm going to explain that and show that in some cards that I just picked out for my collection. And this is kind of going to be along the same lines of the Metaphysics and Philosophy of Pokemon series that I started a while back. So we're going to get into these cards a little bit and talk about them. So within our minds, we have different frameworks in which we can understand the world. And they're usually set up in different narrative structures. We understand the world best as a story, I would argue. And we can understand this in terms of the heroes and the villains and the sidekicks and the journey and the adventure and these more long-term stories that have all kinds of different plots and subplots and different ways they go, and there's the elements of adapting to them and growing from them, and all of these ideas are how we individually understand the world. And what Pokemon did is, I think they did a good job in both the show and in the cards, is bringing out these ideas that already exist in our mind and the way that we understand the world, and they put it in the form of an art form. So here, with this Team Rocket card, we have the villains, the anti-heroes that are there to block the progress of the hero. And that is what they represent. That's how we understand them, and we know intuitively that that's what they are. They're the bad guys. We know what they represent. We know that when they come, they are there to impede the progress of the adventurer or the hero. So there's no, and apart from that, the reason is that it's an art is that it's completely open to interpretation. The narrative and the archetype is there for us, but it doesn't tell us how to interpret it. We are free to do that. It just gives us, in this case, a media representation of that understanding that we have and puts it forth for us to analyze it, interpret it, and understand it as we can individually. And there's just to show off that card as well. These cards, most of these cards will be available on my store, so if you see a card that you're interested in, that's also what this is here for. So here also we have this secret rare Pikachu. So also what Pokemon does, and we've talked about this in past episodes, is that it takes spheres of influence in reality and life and abstracts them into a specific art form, and is conveyed in this piece of media, and it conveys this mouse Pokemon. And the mouse Pokemon has a multitude of ways to interpret it, just like all the pieces of art in the Pokemon world, based on how we understand what it means to be the mouse Pokemon. So for Pikachu, the mouse it moves quietly. It's something that tries to remain undetected and hidden among more dangerous predators in its area. So it's more of a timid aspect of reality. And we can understand all these different Pokemon as something to master within our own lives. And again, the reason that it rises to the level of an art form is because it's not telling you how to do it. It's just portraying that representation for you to think about it and see what it means in your own life. So for anyone looking at Pikachu and wanting to master the mouse Pokemon, they can look into their own lives and think about how they are timid towards something in life, and how maybe they could rise above that and be more courageous and forthright, or maybe even they need to be more timid and not so just aggressive and put themselves into situations that can get themselves in trouble. So there's just a multitude of ways. I'm just bringing forth examples as far as how I am interpreting them, but like I said, there's going to be a multitude of ways to do that. And here we have the Dark Charizard, and it's interesting that so Charizard is the Flame Pokemon, and this card is actually up for auction this week. It's alongside the non-holo version of it. So what we have is Charizard as the Flame Pokemon, and the idea of fire or the flame is the idea of using the elements, harnessing the elements to our advantage. For example, I don't know how many millions of years ago, potentially it was, that humans decided to start cooking food, and this resulted in a drastic change in the way that we adapted to our surroundings, because unlike the great apes, for example, who just chew leaves all day, and they have that big kind of barrel-shaped body because they have to, there's hardly any nutrients in leaves. They have to have this huge digestive tract to get any nutrients out of it. So what humans did is instead of a big stomach, we got a big brain, and we use that to harness the flame or fire. And now, we cook food and we can eat more food and get more nutrients out of it rather than just, for example, eating leaves. So Charizard can be a representation, and it's also a representation of the dragon, which is a really old idea in mythology. The dragon is always something that a hero has to confront to move forward and get to the treasure, for example, the gold. Usually the dragon is portrayed as protecting gold, something valuable, for example. So we have Charizard here, and representing the flame Pokemon, also the dragon, and it's just another artistic representation, representing a sphere of influence in reality that we can contend with, we can understand, and of course the end goal is to master that sphere of influence. And there's just so many spheres of influence, and the Pokemon did such a good job of representing these art forms in the form of Pokemon themselves. Now we have Dark Tyranitar here, and by this time they didn't write it on the card anymore, but Dark Tyranitar is the armor Pokemon. So it represents having a defense, wearing some kind of protection to protect from either the elements or from people or things that would attack you. So this is what Tyranitar is representing. And I think the Pokemon world is so interesting because it does such a great job of capturing the intricacy and nuance of reality, and how many different aspects and spheres of influence there are in the world for us to contend with, and each one is kind of like equally important to contend with and perhaps become a master of. So Tyranitar is the armor Pokemon. So again, it's the idea of wearing your armor, and this can also be seen psychologically as well, not just literal armor, but just to have, it's almost like not to be, it could also mean not being naive in the world, and to be shielded against things that would do harm to you in a general sense as well. Here we have Dark Dragonite. This is another card that is going up for auction on my store this week. So if you're interested, the EX Team Rocket set is an awesome set, great artwork, high quality prints, and artwork itself design on the cards. And again, this card doesn't say it, but Dragonite represents the dragon Pokemon, and just like Charizard, we talked about, with the dragon type is an old mythological abstraction of the thing that tries to prevent you, that is scary and makes you scared, but the best thing to do is confront the dragons in your life, because you could almost say, in the narrative structure of the hero, we are supposed to confront the dragon. That's what we're meant to do. We're actually made to confront the dragons and get the treasure. Next, we have Terrakion. This is kind of it's a more common card, but I like the idea of the cavern Pokemon, because a cavern is a dark place. It's a place that it speaks to the idea of adventuring into the unknown. And so I think this is something also extremely valuable to consider in your life, because if you don't venture into the unknown and test yourself and make yourself stronger by venturing into the caverns of the world, not literally, of course, this could be psychologically and metaphysically, you will miss out, because again, it's also the idea of the cavern itself is just another part of the greater narrative understanding we have toward life. And to not go into the cavern when it's presented from you, you miss that opportunity to grow, become stronger, and also to find out what is inside the cavern. And that's what Terrakion represents. And of course, it would make sense that the artistic representation of the cavern Pokemon is a little daunting and intimidating, and Terrakion he's a large Pokemon. You can see, he weighs 573 pounds. He's six feet tall, so it's a big Pokemon. It's heavy, and it looks very aggressive. So, and I think it's a great artistic representation of the cavern sphere of influence in life. Here we have an Absol, and Absol is the disaster Pokemon. And I think this is something very interesting, because disaster is something that happens with life, but it's also something that can be avoided if the proper steps are taken and you have a good enough foundation to withstand disaster in life. So Absol is the representation of that, and it's interesting because it's a very ghostly kind of Pokemon. It almost seems like a force itself, and it's got sharp pointed edges on parts of the Pokemon and red eyes, so it's got a kind of a menacing aspect to it, but it's also, in reality, it's something that can be dealt with, though. It's not huge. It's rather smaller. It's thin. It's a very light complexion, and it doesn't seem ultimately intimidating in reality, but the appearance of it itself does look menacing. So I think that's a great artistic representation as well for Absol as the disaster Pokemon. Dragons are a very common theme in Pokemon. We have Salamence here, which is another dragon type. And I don't think it's by accident that there's been such there's so much that draws us into the dragon type Pokemon. Dragon type Pokemon tend to be more popular as well. We just have this intrinsic desire to understand the dragon. It's a ferocious, beastly thing, and it represents things that can be good as well. There we go. There's quite a dragon itself right here. Part of my personal collection. The beautiful shining Charizard in PSA 8 condition. Love that card. As well as the Gold Star Charizard. As you can see, obviously I have an affinity myself for the dragon types. Here's just a PSA 4 variation, still a really nice card. As you can see, even a PSA 4 is no slouch of a card. Very nice. Some more dragons. Dragons everywhere. Everywhere in life we're confronted by dragons. They surround us in many different forms, as you can see. But they have to be faced. We're meant to do it. That's the artistic idea, I think, within the Pokemon artistic form, is that they're everywhere, but they need to be faced. And there's other types in the Pokemon world, like the fairy types. And when I think about the fairy types, I think this comes from a long understanding of things that act as kind of like guardians, especially in natural foresty areas. Like, for example, the early ideas of like fairy spirits or guardian of the forest spirits in mythology that act as these spirits that like take care of nature in the forest and prevent people from hurting it. I think if you think of things like bugs even, I think that is where the idea was abstracted for the ideas of fairies or forest guardian spirits, because that's kind of what bugs, I mean, you can think of it as something like that in a narrative form, that bugs act as protectors. I mean, they certainly will prevent you from wanting to go lay in a big bed of roses, right? You know that there's bugs all over the place, and if you lay down in a bunch of roses, even though it seems so welcoming and nice and pretty and colorful, there is a bunch of bugs that will they'll probably start crawling all over you, and some of them can bite. And in that sense, they protect the forest in this sense and keep it as something to be admired and appreciated from a distance, but to not get too close and harm it. So I think that's just one way to think of the idea of the fairy types. And here we have the shiny Sylveon and Gardevoir. And both of these are also up for auction on my store this week. And that's at my user MyManJustin on eBay. And here's the last card I'll just talk about real quick. So we have Dark Slowbro, and this is the Hermit Crab Pokemon. And the idea of the Hermit is an old narrative character archetype that we see still throughout in stories, and it's the idea of the person that goes into a place of seclusion. And there can be different reasons for secluding yourself. Sometimes people become a hermit to master something. For example, they want to be able to completely and totally concentrate on something, some kind of sphere of influence in life, some kind of Pokemon, and become a master at that one. And to do that, they completely seclude themselves from society and all the influences of it, so they can have that ability to just solely focus on one thing. People also become a hermit because they want to seclude from society, because they are unhappy with it, and their experiences in life cause them to want to retreat in a sense. So there's different ways that the hermit can be acted out, and I think Dark Slowbro is an interesting artistic representation of the hermit Pokemon, or the hermit aspect of life, the narrative of life of the hermit, because it's kind of big and fat, pink. It's got a big annoying thing, it looks like, attached to it, biting its butt. So I think it kind of has like an idea that the hermit has something gnawing at it in life, and it usually, and I think that's accurate. I mean, think about it. Either there's some kind of gnawing of wanting to just master something, an obsession that causes them to become a hermit, or also some kind of aspect of society that it just bugs them so much that they want to retreat. So again, Pokemon does another great job of creating this artistic representation for us and causing us to think about these different aspects and spheres in life and how we can personally understand these ideas. And again, this idea of art versus ideology. And there's no ideology in Pokemon. And I think that's a good thing, because in life, I think it's better to not have ideology at all embedded into your thinking, because ideology restricts you. It prevents you from seeing a broader range of things, because you create a strict framework in which things must be interpreted, while the artistic view toward life is much more open. It's open to change, it's open to adaptation, and when you're more open to change and adaptation, then you yourself can better change and adapt to life as it comes to you. So with Pokemon, it's not telling you how to do it at all. It's simply presenting these ideas. It's presenting them in artistic, graphical representations in media forms and saying, here it is. That's it. It is not telling you how to act with it. It's not telling you how to behave with it or how you should interpret it. And that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. As someone who studied media, I think it's a good thing to be wary of media forms that try to present a pre-packaged mode of thinking to you, an ideology, because no one can have a total understanding of life. There's too much, and we see that with Pokemon. We see with the multitude of different spheres of influence, the disaster, the dragon, the armor. There's just too many spheres of influences in life to actually have a totalizing ideological stance on life. It's too complex. There's too much nuance. And that's what Pokemon's telling us, I think. It's a great artistic representation of that fact in itself, that life has just almost an infinite amount of ways to understand, interpret, and interact with it. And it's just a reminder of that. So again, I think it's just a good lesson on art versus ideology. And we see that really conveyed here with the Pokemon artwork. And I will leave you with that. I hope you all enjoyed that, and I hope you saw some cards that you thought were interesting and appreciated the artwork within the cards. And like I said, a lot of these cards are going to be up for sale already or will be listed for auction style this week. So if you're interested, good luck on bidding, and I will see you on the next broadcast. Thanks.